how to get started writing for craft magazines. Took all of this advice that I'd had and I managed to get 7 articles published that summer. And if this is something that you really want to do, if you really want to write, then you can do it too. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. I am a knitter and a sewist and a gardener, and this is my channel where I share everything to do with living a handmade, homegrown and slow life. It is so lovely to have you guys here. Hello especially to all of the new subscribers. We've had lots of new subscribers this month, so hi, welcome. It is so lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I do weekly videos. They tend to come out every Sunday, sometimes Monday if they're a little bit late, but most of the time Sunday, all about sort of making my own clothes and growing my own food and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, welcome. It is really lovely to have you guys here. A lot of you guys will already know that I am a freelance writer. So I work for myself as a freelance writer and a freelance digital content creator. I work with lots of different crafting brands and crafting magazines. And a lot of you guys have asked me about that over the sort of last couple of years. You've asked me more and more about that, how I do that, how, like what my job looks like. So I thought today it would be a really interesting video to answer a few questions, because I often do get people DMing me on my Instagram asking, you know, for advice on how to get started writing for craft magazines, and the advice I'm going to give, actually, to be honest, will go across all magazines, because it doesn't really matter what you're writing about, any specialist subject, it's all quite similar really. One thing I would say though is that the crafting world I've always found to be really lovely. Everybody's really nice, everybody's really sort of like kind and genuine, at least that's been my experience anyway. So that has been quite a nice world to be part of for the last few years. So yeah, I thought I would start by going through my journey a little bit, just so you can understand sort of my background and where I have come from, and then we'll get into some tips and tricks for getting those articles published, getting involved in crafting magazines if that is something that you guys are interested in. Okay, so I have always wanted to be a writer ever since I can remember. I have wanted to be an author. Specifically, I've wanted to write books. When I was little, I started writing my own books. I think the first thing that I really remember like seriously writing, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I entered a competition, a creative writing competition for a short story. I actually still have that short story somewhere. It's a little bit bananas as you would expect with an 8-year-old with like a crazy imagination. So yeah, I started writing from quite a young age. I continued it all throughout my teen years, and I sort of dreamed of one day becoming a writer. I wanted to go and study creative writing at university, but it wasn't really encouraged because it wasn't seen as like a sensible degree. So for the first couple of years I actually went and studied something else, but during that time I set up a blog called Life with the Roof Down. So I set that up in 2015. And I actually wrote on Life with the Roof Down like sort of once, twice a week for 7 years, which I didn't realise until recently. I looked back and I was like, wow. I think I put my last post out on there in 2022, and that's the point at which sort of I decided to close that chapter. But I would say that that was a really great place for me to start like finding my voice, to start writing regularly, to play around with lots of different things, because it was my blog. I could basically write about anything I wanted. So I wrote about slow living, and I wrote about slow fashion, and I did sort of like day trips out in Oxford. So I really like had a go at everything. I would share recipes, I would share travel tips, like it was a real lifestyle vlog, which meant, as I say, I got to try out lots of different styles of writing. So I would say that is a top tip, is you want to be writing as much as possible, because you want to really hone your craft. So if you can set something up like a Substack newsletter, a blog, blog, any of those things, even, you know, writing on, you know, Instagram posts or something. I know it's only a few paragraphs, but you can really start to hone your voice, and you can really have a go at creating, you know, some really beautiful pieces that you feel passionately about, and you can play around with words. I know it's quite scary to share that kind of stuff, but I would really encourage you to have a go at that, because as I say, that kind of stuff was invaluable for me, because for years and years and years I had a place to regularly put out my writing publicly and to see how it was received, and I found that really helpful. And then in 2016, I went to study creative writing at Oxford University. I did their undergraduate diploma in creative writing, which was amazing. For 2 whole years, I got to study creative writing with a bunch of other lovely people, all different ages. I think I was actually the youngest. Yeah, I was the youngest there. I was the youngest on the course, and the oldest I think at the time was 72. So it was a real mix. There were some retired people, there were people who were like in their 30s, there were mums, there were, you know, single people, like just a whole mix of people, mostly women actually. We only had one man, but it was a really great experience. And I obviously came out with a qualification, which has made a big difference for me. It's not strictly necessary to be a professional writer, but I would say that some kind of training is really, really helpful if it's something that you feel that you can afford. If you are, you know, thinking about going to study creative writing at university, I would just say go and do it, because it really is amazing. So that was my first degree, and then a few years later in 2020 I went to study a master's in nature and travel writing at Bath Spa University. I had really wanted to study a master's for a long time. That had always been the plan. After my undergraduate diploma, I really wanted to go on and do further study, because I'd really enjoyed myself. And I wanted to just keep honing my craft. So I sort of graduated from Oxford in 2018. I had 2 years, and then I went to do the masters. And in those 2 years, unfortunately, I became quite unwell with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I also now have endometriosis. So I have a few chronic conditions that I have to manage. I was forced to give up my job as a school librarian, and I spent quite a lot of my time in 2018, 2019 housebound and very unwell. And so when I was looking for my master's, I was obviously looking for one that was really flexible, studying completely from home nearly, where I could sort of, you know, manage my illness around that. And that was exactly what my master's was in nature and travel writing. We had residentials in person, like week-long or weekend-long residentials throughout the 2 years that I was studying. I did it part-time. We had sort of 1 or 2 evening seminars a week during the term time, and then obviously we had all of our assignments. But my lecturers were amazing. I was able to get a lot of extensions and flexibility, because obviously my illness is so up and down, and I never knew when I'd have the energy. And so yeah, I had a really great time studying that. And I would say that's where the big change for me came. So halfway through that master's during the summer, we sort of had the summer off when you studied part-time, because that was your like dissertation module time. And so some people did do a little bit of work for their dissertation the year after, but I didn't. I took the summer off because obviously I have chronic illness and I needed a rest. But I actually used the summer to get some articles published, to use all of the very practical advice that we were given on this master's and put that into place and get some articles published. And it worked so well for me. As I say, that master's was a real changing point, because a lot of the time with creative writing, it's very you know, artistically focused. It's about, you know, growing your craft, training your craft. It's about, you know, creating your own voice. But there's not a lot of practical aspect on actually how to get published and how to get paid for your work. Whereas the masters I did, I would say was a real 50-50. We had 50-50 of really honing our craft, honing our voices, you know, really creating, you know, beautiful pieces of writing, and learning a lot about that. But also I would say the other 50% was very practical on how we can actually get these things out into the world, get them published. Like even things like at one point we had a whole conversation about tax returns, you know, just like really helpful stuff when you're working in as a self-employed writer. So it was a really useful course, really highly recommend it. But yes, halfway through that time, I decided to start trying to get things published, and I took all of this advice that I'd had, and I managed to get 7 articles published that summer, which was pretty epic, and I got paid for every single one of them. I refused to do anything for free. I had been writing my blog at that point for 7 years, and I decided that enough was enough, and I was gonna just get paid for my work, especially because, you know, I think a lot of the thing that drove me with that was that because I had a chronic illness, an energy-based chronic illness, anything like writing, for example, uses a huge amount of my energy. It's a very high intensity energy usage for me. And so I grade everything in my life, and have done for years, in how much energy it uses. And I've become very good now at going, I'm just not going to bother with that, because the energy usage is high, but the sort of like benefits of doing it is fairly low. So that was the case with writing, where it's like, I'm going to put all this work and energy in, I need to get some money, because I wasn't earning anything. I wasn't able to have like a normal job because of my illness and because I was studying. So I was like, I need to get paid for this. I am not doing this for free. So yeah, basically I was able to start getting paid for my work, had 7 articles published, and then that just continued. And as that started to really take off, I decided to stop with my blog, because I just didn't have time to be putting out words for free. And more recently, what has taken over is my Substack. I started that in 2023, beginning of 2023, but at the beginning of this year I set up the sort of paid aspect of that. I now produce 1 highly written article a week for my paid subscribers. All the details to that is in the description bar below if you would like to support me, if you would enjoy reading pieces about living a handmade, homegrown and slow life. I would really suggest you go and check that out. But yeah, I now don't ever write for free. It is always paid, and has been for over 2 years now. So yeah, that is a little bit about my story. I now work mainly for crafting magazines, because that is where the work came, but I have also recently I've written for a nature charity, I've written in a nature anthology, I'm a Christian and I've written for Christian magazines. At the moment I'm working on a book with a Christian publisher. So, you know, I will take work in lots of different spheres, but a lot of my work has come from the crafting sector, particularly Simply Sewing. I'm a regular feature writer for Simply Sewing magazine. I will normally get, you know, at least like 5, last year I think it was 7 features in Simply Sewing a year, which is really, really great, and I really enjoy writing for them. They're a really wonderful magazine to write for. I've also been in Simply Knitting, the Simple Things magazine, like a whole mix of different things. And as I say, I have sort of mainly focused on writing for craft magazines because that's where I've been able to find the work, but I will turn my hand to all sorts of different things. So I think now it'd be really good to get into some my top tips for basically how to do this. I imagine that there's quite a lot of you watching, because a lot of you have commented and said that you also have chronic illness, and so there's probably a lot of you like me who aren't able to work like a normal job, who work from home, work for themselves, having to manage their illness. There may be a lot of you that don't work at all, which was, you know, definitely me for quite a number of years, where I wasn't physically able. I think it was about 3 or 4 years where I wasn't really able to work at all, and I was hardly bringing any money in at all, and that was really tough. And so for me, writing has been a really amazing opportunity. Just, it's freedom for me. I can, you know, manage my illness. I can work as much or as little as I want. It is difficult because I am basically in charge. It's like I say to people, you know, it's a bit like having a job interview, like having a job application and a job interview every single week of your life, because you're pitching constantly and you're trying to get work all the time, which means that like, you know, I know there are some writing positions that are regular, but very, very few and far between these days. Most things are done freelance. So it can be quite hard, it can be quite stressful, and it certainly isn't for everybody. But I really enjoy it. And as I say, it's given me a huge amount of freedom. And I also supplement my writing with a lot of content creation. I probably do just as much, if not more, digital content creation as I do writing. So it is a real mix of the two, but that has afforded me so much freedom, and I just want to say a big thank you as well, because so much of that freedom has come because so many of you have supported me on my Substack and are paying subscribers every month, and that has been a huge thing. So thank you to everybody who's done that, and also thank you to everybody who subscribes to this channel, because that means that I can, you know, keep doing this work that I absolutely love and keep working around you know, quite a severe chronic illness that has to be managed. So I really do appreciate every single one of you, and I really hope that these tips will help you if you are wanting to get your writing published. Okay, so my first tip is probably a bit basic, but it is reading. You need to read. You need to read articles all the time, you know, every week, constantly. When I was studying my masters, I had a subscription to something called Readly, which is a really great online e-magazine service. It's like a subscription base, so you pay a monthly fee. I'm not sure how much the monthly fee is now. When I was paying it, I think it was about $7.99 a month, and you basically get access to a huge range of magazines, and that was so helpful to me because I didn't feel like I had to read the whole magazine. I could just pick and choose articles. You know, when you go out and you buy, like, you know, whatever, Simply Sewing magazine, for example, I think is $11.99 because it comes with a lot of sewing patterns. So you feel like you really need to read that magazine and get your money's worth. Whereas when you're paying a monthly fee and you're picking an article from here and an article from there, I found that so helpful. And I think I may actually renew that subscription soon because I found it to be so useful. So I would really recommend that you read as much as you possibly can, because that is really going to make your writing so much better. I remember when I was a teenager, I used to go to a lot of like how to get published, how to become a writer, workshop type things at the library and at my school and things like that. And every single writer would say the same thing, that to be a good writer, you need to read a lot. And I still read hugely. I do read magazines, but probably not as much as I was during my course. I read a lot of Substack and I read a lot of books, and it just really helps to make my writing better. I'm learning every single day how to make my writing better by choosing to read. So I cannot encourage you to read enough, and that includes things like listening to audiobooks. You know, it doesn't have to be physically reading. You can listen to podcasts, you can listen to audiobooks, you know, things that are just going to inspire you and really help you to improve your writing and improve your craft. So that is my number one tip. Okay, my number two tip is whilst you're listening and reading and doing all of these things, you're likely to be inspired. So keep a list. I keep a note on my phone of articles, and I have it like all organized because of my type A personality. So I literally have on my notes, you know, crafting articles, Christian articles, nature articles, random, and all the different ideas that go up there, because I will sometimes just like meet somebody. For example, I put out a post recently on my Substack from my neighbour, because she is incredible. I did a feature on the shepherd's hut that her and her husband have curated. They have made everything from wood and wool, and they've made it all themselves, handcrafted. They're both artists, and it's things like that. Just a random conversation over the gate led to this fantastic article. And then more recently this month, I have an article, a feature in Simply Sewing magazine with Clive, I think it's Bruder. He is a amazing sewist who has set up the movement We Sew Too, which is an inclusive movement for the LGBTQ plus community, and also Boys Sew Too, which is an inclusive movement for encouraging more men to sew. And I just happened to sort of like bump into him because I actually interviewed his husband Mark, who was on the Sewing Bee, for a feature last year on male sewists, and I had popped over to the stand at the Stitch Festival to have a chat to him and say hi, because we'd only ever spoken via email. He wasn't there, but Clive was there manning the stall, and so me and Clive had a great conversation, and I got back and I sent him an email and I said, I think we should do a feature on you. And it just so happened to be perfect timing because it's the Pride issue this month. And so, you know, this is what I'm saying, like there's constantly inspiration, constantly great conversations, constantly things going on, and you need to keep a note of those because otherwise you will forget them. So have a note on your phone with all of these different ideas for features, you know, even if it's just complete, like I have the most random notes sometimes that just don't make any sense. But they do make sense to me when I really look at them and think about them. So I'd really recommend you keep a note on your phone with all of your article ideas, because you never know when you might want to write one of them. And if you're like sitting down to write an article, often it's quite difficult looking at the blank page, and you go into your notes and you go, oh, okay. Like I will often start literally writing an article because things start to get written in my head. That's how I work. So the writing will start off in my head and I'll start writing it often like when I'm in the bath or like in the middle of the night, which is really unhelpful, but I will start writing in my head, and so I'll like tap a few things out and then it just gets me going straight into it when I come to actually writing the article down. So keep notes on your phone. That is really, really, really important for generating those ideas, for getting yourself started. I have a content plan for my Substack and a content plan for my YouTube and a content plan for my Instagram, just so that I never feel like I get to a point where I'm in like a blank space with it. So yeah, keep notes on your phone. Okay, number 3. Now this is the most important one. It is vitally important that you do a very good pitch. So if you're wanting to pitch to magazines and you're wanting to start writing professionally, you need to write a really solid pitch. So how do you do that? Okay, so you want to first of all get yourself a good email address. So the way I would recommend doing this is if you have something like Readly or you have a copy of the magazine you want to write for, look in the front page where it lists all the different people who work for that publication, find the editor. You want to email that person. If you can't find their email address, often it's quite easy because it's often their name followed by @ you know, Immediate Media, for example, who publish they publish like the Simple Things they publish, Simply Knitting, Simply Sewing, etc. Often it's their name followed by that, so that works really well. If you can't find their email address, send it to the general email address, but put in the subject line, you know, for the attention of, and then the name of the editor. It's also quite good as well. People like the Simple Things, they actually have quite a large team, so their editors do different things. So if you look carefully, you will be able to see the editor for whatever, travel and food, the editor for wellness. And if you need to figure out which one of your, you know, which section your article fits into, because you want to get it to the right person. Now, I'm not saying that if you just send it to the general email, it won't get to the right person, because I have done that loads of times and it has easily got to the right person very quickly. So you can definitely go down that route. But, you know, especially the bigger publications, they are getting pitches and emails constantly. So you want to get as close to the right person as possible. And then the next thing with your pitch is you want to make it quick and easy to read. So you want to start with, you know, dear whoever, I would like to pitch an article. Then you pitch. Don't start with like, hi, you know, my name's Rachel and I studied at Oxford University and I did this and then I did this and now I have an idea for an art. No. You just literally want to get in as quickly as politely, but as quickly as you can into your idea, because editors don't have time to read everything and they just simply won't read it. So if you've got like within the first 3 sentences, your idea, perfect. And that's what I would say as well. If it takes you more than a very small paragraph to explain your idea, that's not going to work. You need to be able to sum up your idea in 2 or 3 sentences, because as I say, editors don't have a lot of time. They need to read that quickly. So you need to be able to sum it up. So for example, the article I've just done, I would email my editor and I'd say, dear editor, obviously her actual name, but dear editor, I would like to pitch an article for Simply Sewing magazine. I met Clive Bruder at the Stitch Festival. He is an amazing sewist who has set up the We Sew Too movement, which is all about inclusivity, and I'd like to do a profile on him, or I think a profile on him and his movement would be really great for the magazine. And I've just summed it up straight away, like what's happening. I'd obviously write it a bit better than that. That was just off the top of my head. So that's what you want to put. And then you can go in afterwards and you can say, I have written for X, Y, and Z. I have got, you know, a creative writing degree from Oxford. I have got blah, blah, blah. And if you haven't got any of that stuff, if you've got a blog, put that in, you know, anything that you've been published in, pop that in at the end, you know, because that really is your sort of credentials. And again, keep it short and snappy and sweet. It's not a massive CV. It's just a quick little, here's my idea, here's who I am, looking forward to hearing from you. And often you will get back, I've had this a couple of times, that sounds great, can I have a sample of your writing? Especially if you've not got any credentials in actual, you know, publications, actual magazines. And so, you know, you want to be able to have a good piece of writing that you feel you can send to them, which gives them a good idea of you and your talent and what you can do. So that is my number 3 tip. I know that was quite a lot of information, but you know, writing a good pitch is really, really important. Okay, my final tip, I know I've been talking for quite a while and I've given you guys a lot of info here. I hope it's all made sense. But my final tip is to not give up. I have had rejection after rejection after rejection. I nowadays tend to write for the same people, and it tends to be, you know, fairly like, most of the time it tends to be a yes, because I know the style, they know my style, they know they can count on me, all of those great things. But I still get rejections from them, you know, they're very nice about it, but I still get rejections from them. You know, I still get rejections from my content work as well. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. If you want to do this, if you want to do something like content creation or freelance writing or a mix of the both, you need to be willing to put yourself in the firing line. And people are normally very nice about it. The worst thing that happens is you'll get ghosted, is that the editor won't bother to reply to you. And really, in the greater scheme of things, as annoying as it is, it's not actually that bad. That's happened to me quite a few times. And I've also had quite a lot of emails saying this isn't really what we're looking for right now. And then I've also had a lot of emails saying, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. Here's the money. So, you know, it really is a mixed bag, and you have to learn to grow a thick skin. You can't be precious about your writing. You need to learn to take criticism. You need to learn to take editing, because even if you get accepted, I've had articles that have been accepted, have been written, sent off, they've then sent me some feedback, I've changed it, and then when it's actually been printed in the magazine, they've moved the whole thing around, the paragraphs are all in different places. And that's fine, that's their job, you know, and it's my job to be okay with that. You can't be precious about it when it comes to your writing. You know, the people who are publishing it, the people who are paying for it are in control, and you have to be willing to just let it go. So I would just, my last tip would be, don't give up, and be really sort of open with letting your writing out into the world. I really, really recommend that you just keep going, and you keep going, because that's what I did. I've wanted to be a professional writer for years, and I've only really just started doing it in the last couple of years. I had a dream that I would have a published book by the time I was 30. I turned 30 in April, still no published book. I'm not going to give up. I will get a book one day, and I will be an author. And if this is something that you really want to do, if you really want to write, then you can do it too. Just do not give up on yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to keep going. And also, you know, tell people around you that you trust and that love you. You know, the minute I told my husband, who at the time was my boyfriend, that I wanted to be a writer, I think I was just about to turn 21. And I said, I actually think I really want to be a writer. I don't want to keep training to be a social worker, which is what I was doing at the time. I want to be a writer. That's what I want to do. That's what I've always wanted to do. And he basically turned around and went, great, I'll support you in that. I think you can do this. And he's been doing that for the last decade. And it has not been easy. And there are still so many tears and so many rejections and so much stress. There was a really stressful situation last week where I got really upset and fed up. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to pack this all in and I'm going to buy a yarn shop. I'm continuing. I'm going to get a book published. I am going to do it. But it's been really helpful to have that support. So if you feel like, you know, you're really struggling with rejection, you're really struggling to like make this dream happen, share it with somebody that you trust and love, who's going to keep you going, who's going to keep encouraging you, who's going to be like, you can do this. And if you don't have anybody like that in your life, I'm telling you, you can do it. You can do this, because I did it with severe chronic illness. So if I can do it, you can definitely do this. So just believe in yourself, okay? Right, that was a lot of words and a lot of talking, and I hope they were helpful for you. If you are wanting to be a writer, I really hope this was a helpful video. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. I also, as well, on my Instagram, you know, if you want to send me some DMs for a bit of help with your writing, you know, I'm not able to sort of look at people's writing necessarily, but I can definitely, you know, help with any questions you might have. So feel free to send me a DM on there. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope it was helpful for you. I will see you next time. Bye.